Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see here or on our website. Reach out to me at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we are discussing the 2008 model year 500-piece limited edition Panerai Luminor 1950 Pangaea Submersible Depth Gauge PAM00307. Got all that? Good. This watch with steel bezel and titanium case is a monster professional diving gear for your wrist. Now the watch is a watch, of course, but it is also a depth gauge, and I'm going to demonstrate all the features of this watch after I demonstrate its sheer size. 47 millimeters in diameter. It's a monstrous 22.7 millimeters thick, but remember, this is diving equipment, not a timepiece primarily. From lug to lug, it's a big watch, 57.5 millimeters, but with a standard 24 millimeter spacing between the lugs, and the watch does use the Panerai quick release system, whereby you depress the spring-loaded trigger on the bottom and then push the bar straight through. It is more secure than spring bars and quicker and easier to change than the screw-fixed bars on older Panerai watches. You've got a simple titanium trapezoidal pin buckle of satin finish, and then you can see the case itself is the Luminor 1950 profile. Let's throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist real quick. It is simply overpoweringly huge. It ain't gonna duck under a cuff, even a snowblower jacket. This is a huge watch that's big because it is functionally huge. It needs to be legible, and that it is. The watch is substantial. It's not as heavy as it would be in steel, but even in titanium, you realize there's an awful lot of apparatus on your wrist. I wouldn't recommend it for a wrist smaller than mine, 16 centimeters in circumference. It would fit, but it would look wacky. Hell, unless you're Shaq or The Rock, this thing's gonna look big. Get used to it. The timepiece is beautifully made, and the strap that's equipped is ideal for the purpose. This is a diving watch, and the strap is a lovely bellows-style vulcanized rubber with that 70s-style interlocking OP logo. You can see there are hollows on the underside to allow for venting of the wrist, which is thoughtful and makes the watch pleasant to wear in hot climates. As you can see, the watch features a case almost entirely of satin finish. It is the 1950 profile that debuted on the PAM00307 back in 2002, designed to be more true to history. It represents the reference 6152 combat watch of the 50s as closely as possible in a modern idiom. As you can see, the watch does feature the locking lever and the post-2007 design with the little roller bearing or runner inside. This is as good as it gets in terms of iconic design because I can cover up that dial and you already know who made this watch. It's not just very distinctive from an aesthetic standpoint, but it is functional. It's tough to dive with your crown unlocked because this is hard to miss. It's also designed to preserve the seals. Back in the era when these watches needed to be manually wound, the idea was to be able to seal the crown without continuously threading it in and out. So after the Rolex cases and their screw-down oyster crowns, this system was implemented in the 50s. It also offers better impact protection and abrasion defense than you would get with a standard shouldered crown guard. The bezel feels and sounds awesome. Have a listen. The best feel and sound in the business. Now you have an oversized luminescent pearl that you can line up with the minute hand for an impromptu 0 to 60 minute count up timer. I find this actually easier to read than a chronograph, plus most chronograph minutes registers only go up to 30. This gives you 60. The timepiece, of course, does feature a blue dial with yellow accents and luminova in its brightest lime green variant. On the dial, you will note there is no date. Instead, the complication here is a depth gauge. The watch is water resistant to 120 meters, and it indicates up to 120 meters. Now, when you press the crown once, it will show you your most recent maximum depth. But if you hold the crown for 6 seconds, it will actually reset the system. So it will clear the memory, and it will no longer indicate your most recent maximum depth. It will be ready for the next dive. Now, you may wonder, how is this actuated? It is actuated by a lithium-ion battery in a METAS certified module. When it gets low, it will beep to let you know that the depth gauge mechanism's battery is running down. So keep that in mind. That's something important to note. There are 2 separate power systems in this watch, a battery and a mainspring. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the case back and then discuss the movement. You can see this is the Pangaea model, dedicated to the monomass of continents that existed 300, 200 million years ago, but you also note the name Mike Horn, and back in 2008 his exploration vessel was called the Pangaea. So that is the origin of the name here. You can see this distinctive case back covering what Panerai calls the OP15 movement. It's basically a Valjoux 7750 P1 chronometer certified automatic winder that is the 7750 without the chronograph module. 21 joules, automatic winding, unidirectional action. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It does feature stop seconds and a COSC chronometer certification. So this is both a very tough watch and a very accurate one. A unique proposition, as you will not see many depth gauge dive watches. There are a handful out there. Panerai was on a kick with these watches in the late 2000s with the 193 and the 307. I prefer the blue dial and yellow accents of this 307. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And I am back with the blazing PAM00307. Note the depth gauge is fully loomed.